You're watching the vidcast for Dragon Age Session 15. They're coming to kill an evil wizard. They're coming for you, Zorton Throg. This is another fighting fantasy conversion kit. I did a video telling you before what you were going to need. I've also done one of these before using Steve Jackson's introductory role-playing game based in Titan, the fighting fantasy universe as well, the Wishing Well, first adventure for that. Of course, Shagrad's Hives of Peril will be done at some point as well, but because of some of the more exotic type enemies in there, perhaps a higher tier would be more suitable. We have here Steve Jackson, Ian Livingston, Dungeoneer. So link in the info bar if you want to get it too. Of course, there is going to be some degree of spoilers. I'm also going to make available the stuff that's my GM conversion notes on the blog, like I did last time with the other one. And the thing is, you won't just be able to read the conversion notes in the blog, scanned up, without having a copy of this book too. It just won't make any sense, because I didn't want to like incite copyright issues or anything like that. Plus, it's a whole lot of time-consuming issue, isn't it, copying up things like this anyway. So, and in some cases, there is just there's a lot of guidance that goes into here. It's a very good book. And they're telling you, oh yeah, well, if the characters do this, then you should do that. Those kind of instructions, wherever they're said in here, I leave them in here and use this as the main idea of inspiration. Now, the big thing, really, for converting this, the big issue, is that, obviously, they're talking about king this and king that, and for Dragon Age, that just doesn't cut it. So, I went along and made them, like, Arls or whatever, but people that are quite high, so it's an Arl's son. And an Arl's son has hired them. So it's Arl's daughter has been kidnapped, basically, by Zorton Throg at his wizard's tower. And the other Arl's son was betrothed, ready to marry her. So he's gone out with the adventurers to try and track down Zorton Throg. And they've got this army with them. So pretty much I just chucked them in and said, okay, you've been hired for this. But behind it all, because I'm doing the long view as well, for the campaign, they're also working for House Baranti. So they're there on behalf of Ban Nicola as well, because when they went to the laboratory last time, they recovered some paperwork, which obviously showed that Damus Arcan is really quite a problematic figure, but there's also mention of a Zorton Throg in that paperwork. They figured out that Zorton Throg is their only lead to finding Damus Arcan now at this point. Zorton Throg used to be an apprentice of Arcan. Now, of course, Damus Arcan is God knows how many hundreds of years old himself, so he's probably had a lot of apprentices, and this is one of his nasty ones, and, if he even knows a fraction of his powers, he could be quite dangerous indeed. Interesting stuff. I'll also say that a lot of the stuff that happens in the second adventure, because this book's got two in it, the first one's the Tower of the Sorcerer, which is what we did. The next one is based in Blacksand, which is a city on a river, and and then there's another book as well called Blacksand with an adventure based in Blacksand. So a lot of that, because of the way it feels in the pirates and the coastline stuff, I'm feeling that would be better left for somewhere like Rivain or something like that, because of the pirate connection, and just maybe change the name of Blacksand to something else, and one of the areas there. That's what I'm kind of thinking. What do you guys think? If you've had experience with Blacksand, maybe Rivain, yeah, because of the pirates. We'll take a look at what they did. But just before they went in, they met their replacement for Paydar. Because Paydar died at the Siege of Redhold, so they had to have someone come in. And the new dog that Karak was bought by Tanador is still only a pup, so he can't really come out with them yet. So they were introduced to Phelan. Now, he is a Dust Town dwarf who works for House Baranti, and she said, look, this is my man, and my dwarf, and I'll let you have him. to work with you. You know, he's a specialist in his own field. And he's a very sneaky type of rogue, crossbow-wielding little menace. And this is what Pete is now using. If you want to see this character's character sheet in more detail, then that will be on screen for you to check out. I did a video showing him off. Let's take a look at how this went. So, I mean, even little elements of the conversation and the way they've laid it out here is very, very cool. You see, there's a character who speaks Barinjar. So that's the in this book he's a prince. So obviously he's the son of an Arl. So this, yeah. So Barinjar, and then his line, and then Morval, his captain, and then his line, and then you know the back and forth like that. So you've got a nice little script here with lots in it for you to speak to the players, and they're on horses that are going up a track heading towards this rotten sorcerer's tower. We have some nice artwork depicting that as well. And it's just something to show the players, you know, every thing that happens there is a piece of artwork to show them, and it really helps them set the scene, really. Also for this, I'm going to say, and the guide even tells you, that, and of course, link in the info bar if you want to get at the conversion guide on my blog. So for some of the stats of monsters in this, you're going to need Dragon Age Set 2 Games Master's Guide, as well as some of the Set 1 stuff. So yes, a pretty interesting way to start, being thrown right in like that. And of course, all mentions of goblins thereof automatically become Genlocks. And all orcs in this particular case, just to play it safe, become better armoured Genlocks, as in not the unprepared ones, as you'll soon see coming up. So then there was this element of he's saying, oh yeah, do you know, I swear I saw a griffin actually steal Sarissa away up into the tower. And they said, griffins, they've been extinct for like a couple of centuries now or whatever. It couldn't have been a griffin. That's interesting because as the book has it, there is a griffin. And of course there were griffins in Dragon Age. There were the Grey Wardens, sigil even, their crest. But yeah, they died out. They didn't have them to ride anymore. You'll see a twist on this because yeah, there's supposed to be a griffin somewhere here. You'll see what I've done with it. So yeah, there's just really a case of setting the scene, getting the notion that the trail is being used by Darkspawn, that this wizard in his tower must be out of his mind, quite frankly, you know, having these Darkspawn there working with him. What sort of monster must he actually be? What sort of power must he exude over them? What's he got access to? The army has rode on up, you know, with Barinjar, has rode on up to the drawbridge, up to the high path, and they are basically talking with him in negotiations to try and get Sarissa back. And while they're up there, our heroes, the small party, will sneak in through the secret entrance that the priest people have found. So in through this cave that has been discovered, in they go, signs of Genlock present, and they finally make their way into this cavern. So they're pushing out across this big dark cavern, and they've got a lantern that's going, so that's okay. So I've got all this big cavern, this natural cavern drawn up on a whiteboard for them. I've got something over it covering it, giving like a fog of war effect, so they don't know what's there. They pressed a bit further in, somewhat unwisely in fact, and they failed to spot the Genlock ambush in time. Only one of them was fully surprised by it, however, which was Phelan, and out come the Genlocks. Now, these are unprepared Genlocks, because they didn't even realise that visitors were coming to them, so they've only put on enough scraps of armour to give them an armour rating of 3, and they aren't all that well equipped compared to the other ones upstairs in the tower. They are here to swamp the players. There was quite a lot of them. I think it was like 2 for every player character, so 4 of them and 8 Genlocks, and it's a case of surround them and get stuck in, you know, spread out across, try and team up 2s on things, but in some cases, you know, even more than that, like 4 on one person. But, you know, it's a case, it's still generating with D4s to see actually who they're going to go after in a lot of cases, to be quite honest with you, just to make things fair. And what I did in this case, it was very, very specifically drawn on the whiteboard so that, you know, you can tell really that it's kind of, the way in is like a bottleneck, right, and then it comes out into the cavern. So they are out into the cavern, and they could have retreated back. Because, you know, by the time I spring the trap, I leave it so they can do it within a round and get back and create a bottleneck. And that's actually what Tannadill wanted to do. But the others didn't really jump on that idea. And he said, well, it's pointless me just doing it then, because a bottleneck doesn't work with just me on my own. They'll all come in and break through it. It's pointless. That was a bit of a shame, because that's actually what I had a special stunt section created here for players. I don't know how much you like it or how much you think it will make sense, but it's just something I made, really. What do you think of it? It's called Swap. It costs 6 stunt points. So any of the heroes at the front can swap places with one at the back, okay? It's, you know, both got a consent. Stunt points can be banked towards obtaining this target. Banked stunt points can only be spent on the swap stunt, okay? Then they just agree and whoop, off they go. So obviously if someone's about to die at the front, then over they go. There's also enough room for you to be able to launch ranged attacks over from the back. And also I've made it so that melee attacks can happen in the second rank unless you're using something from the spears group. So anyway, they wiped that out fairly convincingly. It was a good fight for them, you know, against the 8 like that. And they eventually, some of them did flee. And then we're getting out of book territory at this point. Oh, and by the way, in the original one, in this, we can see the goblin caverns here, because it's goblins that actually ambush them in the book here, and you see the image for it. It's very cool. It just shows, you know, a lot of enemies really, but it's only goblins, so they're supposed to be fairly easy to kill. Well, genlocks are a bit harder than that, aren't they? But you know, they are the sort of relatively the equivalent. So I deviated from the book point here and started doing just a little something extra just to really flesh this out, because I started thinking about it. Because it's Darkspawn, he's going to want us to keep the rough ones out of his tower. He doesn't want them to be able to get in, so there's got to be a few security devices, and rather than use brute force against them, which they might manage to overcome, if he uses just intelligence, that should do the job. So hence puzzles were coming. So as they made their way on and squeezed their way through kind of like a crack where they had to turn sideways and squeeze their way along it, they came out eventually into an area, and this is where I started using some ideas on the community. So we went with a few of the players' DM channel ideas here. So one of them was the 4 statues. Now this was arranged inside the room, and there's a grate there that will open if you fulfill some sort of criteria. And the 4 statues are all in different poses. So one of them was like in a bowing prayer pose like that. One of them was doing the lotus on the floor, and one of them was kind of like in a combat meditative yoga stance, kind of like the warrior or something like that. And this sort of thing. They figured out quite quickly, look, we'll stand in front, one of us in front of each statue and copy what the statues are doing. And as they did each one, the statue's eyes glowed green, and sure enough, the door opened and on they went. And then they got given a few riddles. Now that was interesting. This is where they started to struggle. And in fact, these riddles, you know, they were going to be worth experience. If you want to take a look at the riddles, they'll be in the info bar below. So when you're scanning down in the info bar, if you want to see the riddles that the players came up against, then you'll see the riddles there. And then right at the very, very bottom, underneath all the music credits, the very, very, very bottom of the info thing, is the answers to the riddles. So I have separated them out so you won't catch sight of the spoilers until you've answered the questions in your way. Okay, so I won't go all through those. You can take a look in the info bar there. But they did struggle, especially on the maidens one. That was awfully difficult for them. They spent a very long time trying to figure that out, just punching out all sorts of things. And it was basically these they came to these walls, and they had these statues built into the walls, kind of like just part of it, and the form of the statue was forming partly up out of the wall, but it's made of the same material, and it speaks and challenges them with a riddle, and then only when it answers does it crack apart and open. And there was 3 such doors, so they had to do the riddles of those, and then there was a final puzzle riddle encounter, a puzzle. These riddles here, they're I pulled these off of the internet. But then this final one is another Players DM one. Well, he's not called Players DM anymore, is he? He's Puzzle of the Week or something, so, or D&D Puzzle of the Week. 2 statues in the room. Okay, and then there's the grate, and it's not opening no matter what. And as soon as they ask a question, the statues answer the question. So they're saying something like, "How can this grate open?" And the statue called Anlock, Anlock, would answer that at that point and say something like, "You have to fulfill our criteria." And then when they say, "What is that criteria?" the other statue called Lanaz, Lanaz, would answer and say, "You must guess our secret." So, what is our secret? And Lanaz would answer that. That is for you to guess, but we are giving you clues in everything we say and everything you say. So they struggled probably for about an hour trying to figure this out. And by me actually telling you, you know, who's answered what question, I'm actually giving you the clues too. Can you figure it out? Can you figure it out? And if you were to ask the statues, can you figure it out? Anlock would answer and say, "It is not our job to figure it out. That is your purpose." Why is that only that particular one answering? And if you ask them the same question again, the same one will answer. Can you figure it out? It'll be Anlock again every time. Can you figure it out? Anlock again. Have you figured it out? Anlock would answer again. Does this gate open at all? Anlock would answer. Would it open? Lanaz. Will it open? Lanaz. What's the secret? Well, I'll put you out of your misery if you are stuck. But unless you've already seen the videos by him as well. But chuck it in underneath anyway. Your guesses. But they were really badly stuck here. And I'm going to now give you the answers to this particular one. The answer is that Anlock, the clue is in the first and last letter of his name. And Lanaz, the clue is in the first and last letter of his name. Did you get it now? It's that whatever you start your question with determines which one of those two will answer. So if you start anything between A and K, Anlock will answer. So there you go. Did you get it? They finally got it. The tip was, write the names down. Now normally that's supposed to help people because as soon as you give them a hint to do that or write it down, they're normally supposed to twig at that point. But the problem was 2 of our guys that had done that, they wrote the bloody names down the wrong way round. They wrote Lanaz and then Anlock. That was that bit done. Just something a bit different for them. It's all very well rolling dice and brawn, but, you know, a bit of brains sometimes could be interesting. But my friend Laurie actually did raise a good point about that, the problem with puzzles, in some way, because there's something about puzzles inherently, perhaps, that might sometimes dematerialise your character playing existence within the world, because the puzzle's really there to challenge you, the player, isn't it? Something that you've really got to take seriously to try and figure out, and you're really there, damn. And you can't really be portraying your character stuck in this, can you? It's how do you do it? Because what if you can figure it out and your character wouldn't, in your opinion? Then you don't know the answer, surely. Or what? You know, if you really start thinking about it, that can get really heavy, can't it? You know, what do you do? It's a bit like the old, I suspect there's probably a trap here, but, you know, my guy is foolhardy, so I probably will just walk up the middle, even though I reckon there probably is a trap. Even if, or maybe you've actually read the module and you know that the floor is trapped or something like that, and you're still going to walk up the middle just because it's what your guy would do, you know. The other danger is, of course, that 2 of my guys, Laurie and Pete, had already played Dungeoneer, and in fact all the Titan group-based ones with me, but I actually ran them with them on 2 different occasions, solo, once with Laurie, solo, once with Pete, solo, and he had some NPCs with him. They both had NPCs with them on both occasions that built up with them as the mini campaigns went on. And this was years and years and years ago when we were probably late teens or something, I don't know. And we, ran it over the phone as well, just for the heck of it. So anyway, they get all through this, and they start ascending the tower. And they come to the portcullis. I've said it before about these books, that the illustrations are really quite brilliant. And we can see here the Tower of Zortenthrog, the way it's laid out for us. Isn't that something else? Isn't that just beautiful? We can see the entrance at the bottom, the cave entrance, where they fought the Genlocks. I tagged a load of extra stuff on here. There's all these puzzle rooms that all wind their way around before eventually going upstairs here, and then up to the portcullis, which is the first floor. So you see there's several floors of encounters, things to do here before they get to the wizard. If someone is to actively check for traps, you'll see my notes have detailed that, to get them testing a bit lower for it. But maybe if someone's got the traps focus, or maybe even if they haven't, you could just give them one last crack, but it's really hard, target number 17, just to accidentally not step on the thing, the flagstone, which will set the portcullis off coming down. And it was a big thing on, oh, now it's coming down, split second reaction, what are you going to do? And I've put rules in there for being able to try and lift the portcullis. And basically, Phelan and Amelia dived forward through the portcullis. It's very important you dive backwards or forwards as you know it's coming down in that split second. And with each test needed, the agility, acrobatics to dive through, it's one increment higher for each one after, because the other guy's gone first, so it's the portcullis is going to be that much lower at this point. And the last two failed, and so they both got hit by it. But 4d6 damage, and it only came out as 12 on them. So all it really ended up doing was kind of grazing them a bit. Nothing impaled, as I called that, really. But if someone had got impaled partially, then there'd have been all these strength might tests collectively to try and pull the portcullis back up, and that could have been nasty. They worked their way up then to another level, and Phelan got to break in his new lock-picking skills to get these doors open, and they found the prisoners there, malnourished and in an awful state. And they said, it was just an opportunity, really, to demonstrate how bad Zortenthrog is. As the book explains, it explains a lot of very good things for you. I like this book. You'll also see my homebrew rules in the notes there as well for lock picking, the way I run that, but I'll probably do a video on that soon anyway. So then they went up to another level, which was the sword blades. There's the sword blades. You can see a couple of stone hands holding scimitars, and they're just slashing back and forth. So there's some rules in there for them trying to get by, or if they can climb above on the little ledge thing, you should point out that there is like a little upper ledge thing, and if they attack it from above, they can maybe knock a blade out. But what they ended up doing was stepping to the back and shooting arcane lance attacks at it, so it cost no mana, knocking the scimitars out of the hands, and then they were able to wander past the hand that was just still moving with no weapon in it. Fair enough, both of the hands. But there are different ways of being able to deal with it, and there's a dangerous way of trying to dive through it and so on. They went up to the next level, and they had to unbar the door, and they thought they could hear like an animal inside. And that's when they met the Griffin. Yes, there it is, guys, the Griffin. And they spell it differently in this book to the Dragon Age lore, of course. So you'll see I've statted this thing up, and don't worry so much if some of the stats don't always make sense on some of these enemies as well. It's like, oh, hang on, because its dex is such and such, shouldn't its defense be such and such? Or shouldn't it actually be doing this? And it's sometimes a case of, no, I thought I'd break it here or whatever, but, you can reevaluate it as you see fit as well, the GMs, It's just some quick hand-drawn notes as I wrote it, So you see there, that's my notes page for it, that will be scanned and up on the blog for you to check out. This Griffin I've made severely dangerous for them to take on. He's got 60 health. He's got a Talons attack that is a +7 to hit, right? 2d6 +3 full penetrating damage. He's got a Peck attack +7 to hit, 1d6 +1 penetrating. If Peck causes damage, roll a Constitution Stamina 12 to not be -1 Dexterity for the fight. Can stack up to 5 times. So this foe really is, yes, this is it, a multi-stacking effect. It's essentially a sunder, okay? Normally, things can't stack. In this case, I've had it so that they can. So minus dexterity, remember, means your speed is lowered, so it's like a hamstring, but it's your defense goes down as well, remember. And this thing is dangerous. It's seriously 2d6 plus 3 penetrating. I mean, that could quite quickly even take a Templar out, couldn't it? Favoured stunts bleed, so it's got a damage over time as well, a special stunt that it can do just for this. And it can do a supernatural shriek as well, which forces a willpower courage test, which means you're either -2 for the to attack for the rest of the encounter, or you run away fearful for 1d6 rounds. And it's actually the player's choice which. It's got ice resistance as well, because it's an undead griffin. That's right. It's got these congealed feathers that give it an armor save, and it's kind of... This thing has been kept animated in an evil state by Zorton Throg, so he's obviously used some of the principles of Damus Arcan's longer life recipe, but he's got this undead thing here. So, I mean, it needs putting out of its misery, quite frankly. And everybody else's misery too. But they took one look at it and slammed the door shut. And you know, that's the clever thing to do. Because I explained, there's nothing else in this room. And they worked out there's really no need to get into this fight. And it is a schoolboy error getting into that fight, quite frankly. So if they fight the thing and go up against it, it's their own damn fault. You can't loot it. It's an animal. Do you know what I mean? It's not loot's not going to fall out. This is really there as a test for those, computer gamey types. You've got to warn them, get them thinking, shit, this is a actual portrayal of more common sense thinking. This isn't a computer game. So yeah, they did the right thing, really, I think. So they slammed the door. This thing was purposely dangerous as an encounter for them. They went further up and they met the fireball. You can see it there. And it's just slowly coming down the hall towards them. And it's actually an illusion. And if they'd have run back down the stairs and come back up, they would have seen it would have reset. So what's actually happening here is they got a bit closer and sort of said, oh, is it giving off any heat? And no, it's not. So Amelia walks through it first. Even though they were going to actually have Phelan walk through it because dwarves are more magic resistant. Amelia walked through it just fine, so they all walked through it and that was that. So they got past the fireball fairly easy. And it's just another thing in there, really, just to hold them back. I've also put in there cunning arcane lore target number 10 to realise it's fake. But I think in that case you really ought to have the focus rather than... Because in some of these books, they just suggest it, oh well, you could just use your cunning even if you don't have arcane lore. But it is more so kind of something. If it's going to be an arcane lore check that really tells you that it definitely is just an illusion, then you probably ought to actually have focus in it. Or at the very least be a mage, for Christ's sake, to even be able to do the test, even if you don't have a focus. I mean, what's the point of your class otherwise? Now, we went on to the next floor. There's floor after floor after floor, getting higher. And this is in the book, they've got the giant lizard. And he's got the riding gear and all this sort of stuff. And I thought, okay, that's not going to swing, guys. It really isn't. I mean, I saw stats somewhere on a website where someone had made a basilisk and brought that into the Dragon Age universe, but there's no conclusive evidence that there's anything like that in the universe. So I've gone with something a bit different here, okay? What I've gone with here, and again it's another lock picking to try and get the door even open, is multiple deep stalkers, which is sort of somewhat randomly generated. And then you explain that there's like these little vent things in the wall, kind of near to around the floor, against the wall. There's a few of them, and they're just the ideal size for deep stalkers. And you can hear scratching and sounds coming from down the tunnels, seemingly the passages that they lead off to, wherever they lead off to. And they're so small, sort of thing. And there's a bunch of these deep stalkers in there. So you might have remembered them from the computer game, but these are actually set 2 enemies, these deep stalkers. So it's not too bad, but in enough numbers, they can start doing their pack attack thing, where they can start proccing to stunts to make another one of them attack as well. So another one gets a free attack as well as this one that attacked, and so on. So they can all start getting these bonus attacks out of initiative. And yeah, you want to kind of like balance it. So the way I've suggested it is sort of having maybe 3 plus d6 initial, and then kind of decide how many more you'd have to come in. Another d6 or 2d6 sort of over time, have them come in drabs every however many rounds or something. I haven't put anything too concrete in there really about it, because it's up to you to sort of judge that one. You don't want to kill them off too soon really on this one, because this is just setting the scene really, and making them hate Zort and Throg, especially for what's coming up. Now they finally get up to the guard room, and this is the original artwork for that. So we can see a bunch of orcs in there playing dice games and things, and we see an ogre as well, and they've got a human leg on a spit on a fire, and they are roasting that. It's very neat actually. They've given us a little map of the room as well, so you can employ that should you so wish. And they've suggested, try and get creative, with the props in there, the scenery. Maybe pick up a chair and smack them with it, or try and use the fire in some way, or whatever. And you could really give those choices, and it all mentions it in here. It's it really is good. But our guys, they sort of hung at the door, and what I've had them come up against is some fully prepared Genlocks, only one per party member, and an alpha with them as well. I didn't make this too overwhelming, but I suppose you could increase the Genlock count a little bit. You could say 1 per party member plus 2 if you wanted to push them a bit, because I have sent level 4s at this, and they were doing all right. If they build themselves okay, they'll be quite strong, especially if you've got a good range of classes. Now, yeah, the alpha can be a bit of a sod, and what they did was they tried blocking the doorway with the 2 warriors. So they stuck Tanadil and Amelia kind of at the doorway, blocking the way off, and then the others were behind them, so they were able to do their ranged attacks and so on from behind the 2 warriors. So the Genlocks were forced to have to engage, so they were kind of doing something more bottlenecky here, but there wasn't any stunts set aside for it this time. The Alpha was getting quite annoyed at them, and the Genlocks were in his way. So once the first 2 Genlocks had gone down, the Alpha ran in, engaged alongside one of the Genlocks. So the Alpha, he really means business, and they've got this wonderful skirmish stunt thing where they can tactically skirmish one of their own Genlocks as like an order command thing, and actually move one of them with skirmish points. I love it. Alpha was taking on Amelia at the doorway, right? So they're head to head, and the Alpha pulled out this crazy damage on her, and it procced 6 on the dragon die, okay, with a double stunt proc. So with those 6, he spent the lot on skirmish. He skirmished Amelia back, like 4 stunt points worth, and then skirmished himself forward 2 stunt points worth. So it was essentially, he's booted her hard through the doorway, smacked her blockade back, broke the line, and he's broke out into the doorway too to make a gap, so the other Genlocks then started to stream out through the gap. So that was, the Alpha, he was showing authority and command there, and he took control of the situation. But still the heroes managed to slay them all, just overcoming them with just their power, their skill. I mean, it depends how bad you'd want to make it, but I mean, if you did it exactly like the book, it's saying Grubthak the Ogre, and an ogre in this world is completely a different concept in some cases to, what they might be facing in Dragon Age, and especially at the tier level we're playing at as well, Jesus. So, next up, they walked into the wizard's chamber. Got a little map thing for it there. It's a little 3-section thing. Sarissa's tied up on the bed, but we see the throne room there and the fire. And either side of the throne room here at the bottom, which is where Zort and Throg is sitting, is an incense burner, right? So the way I've done this, and I drew it out on the whiteboard, they were going to need to make 4 incremental steps to try and get to the wizard. Right, he goes through his little bit of talk first anyway, and exposition, and haha, you've made it, and erects a nice barrier so that they can't get at him to interrupt his nice little Bond villain-esque type moment of gloating. And then, of course, the twist happens. Major spoiler here, guys. Here comes the spoiler. Prince Baranjar walks into the room and starts saying, well, yes, you know, I set this up. I'm in cahoots with him. We just simply couldn't let you live, though, could we? So we're going to have to do something about it now. So it's going to be the two of them versus the group. So what gives here? They're outnumbered. Well, Baranjar's a fairly decent fighter, but I don't have him being able to do masses of damage. He's only using a rapier. You can do like the pierce armor stunt, disarm and lightning attack as his favoured, so you can see kind of what he's like here. He's nothing too exceptional, but it's interesting. It's Zorton Throg that could potentially be very dangerous. So basically, what I've done here is I've had Zorton Throg, his mouth opened, right, and this cold blasting wind shot out and hit the group. Once the shield had come down, yeah, so that they could get at each other. And what happened was, this blast of wind is keeping the party back. So, if the party, this is very, very key to this encounter, alright guys? If the party attempt any ranged attacks, that is, physical ranged attacks or spell in any way, even like a mind blast, alright? He automatically disintegrates it, knocks it aside, or blocks it in some way, or dispels it. Okay? No ranged attack can harm him at all. However, ranged attacks can hit anything else in the room and he won't try and stop them. He won't think to try and stop them. Anytime any hero walks towards him, you'll be having them go one incremental step against the wind. Okay? So they need to be able to walk 4 times to arrive at him, to start cutting at him. Okay? So then, every time someone moves, he unleashes one of these empowered arcane bolts that I've got written here. It's kind of like an arcane bolt. It does its damage plus dragon die as an arcane bolt would do, but it's got the added benefit as well of knocking you back to the start of the room where you began. Ooh, boy. And that's going to keep happening. And every time one of you move, he gets an automatic reaction empowered arcane bolt at anyone that moves. So he fights completely out of initiative. He's firing these things. He can fire them like a, not quite like a machine gun, but you know what I mean. A crazy rate. So someone moves and boom, and someone moves and boom at them, and someone moves and boom, and they could try like a defense thing to try and absorb the blast versus his spell power. Or they could try an agility test here to dive out of the way, dexterity acrobatics. Then they avoid the knockback effect of it at least, and they don't get pushed back. So they try and force their way to him by either defending 4 times or doing acrobatics 4 times in a row. And so what you essentially want here is the group to keep getting pushed back and failing so that they all realise, look, we're all going to have to charge together until one of us finally will break through and get to the blighter and start slicing him up, okay? And then that's it. He's only got fingernails to attack with, aside. Other than that one spell, he's only got that one spell. Yes, that's right. Because it will all make sense at the end, guys, okay? Just bear with. It will all make sense. So he's blasting them with this one spell. Now, this is the thing that kind of pissed us all off, actually. Because this is the bit, right? You've got to explain to the players, whenever he casts, every time he casts, kind of subtly, you don't want it too bad, but that the incense burners glow. Spell goes off, they glow. Oh, and you've noticed the incense burners glow, suddenly flare up just for a moment, and off comes an empowered arcane bolt. If you play it off like that, it doesn't sound as connected as saying, oh, he's done an arcane empowered bolt at you. And by the way, you notice the incense burners glow every time he does it. If you just state it as a plain, cold fact alongside him doing it, and it's still quite obvious, but you don't want to hold your players' hands too much. Eventually they should figure it out. And the idea is they either charge across at him or fire a ranged spell at one of the incense burners. Knock it off. Stop it from functioning. destroy it in some way, or knock it off of what it's standing on, and then he can't focus channel from it because that's what he's using. He's not using mana or any of that. He's just firing these things using it. This is a very hard confrontation until someone figures it out. Now, one of our players has already run through it. On his first attack of the foe proper, he goes and says, "I'm firing at the incense burner." And all the other people are looking at him and say, "What? What?" You can see that they don't automatically know, "Oh yeah, that's a good point." They haven't even got to that point yet because it's only the first round of combat. And I thought to myself, oh god, here we go. This is basically the combat ruined now. This is the encounter ruined. So he hits the incense burner, even though it's player knowledge, character knowledge, and he claims that he made a mistake and forgot. But I'm saying, I would argue that and say subconsciously he's already done it before. Even if it was some years ago, something in him would remember the incense burners. The other guys are really, really intelligent. They didn't think to attack the incense burners yet. He's knocked this incense burner over, and then this has screwed up the Zortenthrog's plans completely. And at this point, he loses a round, and then Karak was able to do his Mind Blast, which knocked Throg down, so he's not even doing the Wind Blast thing anymore. And then they were just able to charge across the room and just slaughter him, basically, and take out Baranjar, who couldn't even finish off Phelan, because he's not too dangerous. He's just there as a fool. He's there as... He looks powerful, when Zortenthrog's firing off like a machine gun, but as soon as you figure out his secret, that's it, it's done. They're both done. So the player kind of apologised to the group for having done that when I pointed out, oh, you should have let one of the guys that haven't worked it out attempt to work it out, really. And they just went through it so easily from doing that, and they didn't have to do their 4 rounds or anybody, as I would say, legitimately working out how to beat him properly. And as a result of that, I gave the group 0 experience for the boss encounter against Zortenthrog. I've said it before, guys. Dragon Age is a self-governing experience system. If you've got players that like to be cheesy or do things or cheat or anything like that, in Dragon Age, they do it to their own detriment, because there's one thing players love more than anything, and that's experience. And it harms experience, Consumption of resources, mana, ammunition, health, and bandages, charges for that. Lockpicks, charges for that, Whatever you've gone down in, whatever you've had to expend in yourself to do, that's what earns you experience in Dragon Age. How challenging was it? And, well, that just sickened me. At that moment in time, that just made me think, right, the whole night just feels like a waste now, frankly. And for a very long time after that, I really just didn't feel like GMing Dragon Age again for a little while. So I'm preparing the next thing. I don't want to say too much what it is anyway at this point. I'll just kind of like drop it on you after we've done it. Then they find Sarissa tied up on the bed. They free her. And then when they come back into the throne room that Throg was sitting on, his body collapses in on itself with kind of like this sucking sound. And then his face flares up in the fire. And in comes the evil monologue. And he's like, haha, you didn't really kill me. You've only beaten my simulacrum. Now it all clicks, right, guys? It's just his simulacrum, yeah? And he says that he's miles and miles away. Leagues away. They'll never find him. They don't know where he is. And so on. Well, in Titan he's in Black Sand, which might mean he's actually in Rivain, as we said. So that could be an interesting trip across the water at some point. And if anyone's got any information on Rivain, other than just the wiki page that doesn't really tell you a lot, then that would be good. But there really isn't much to really go on, is there, quite frankly? We know that 2 people... from Rivain. We know Duncan is from Rivain, and Isabella, of course. It still doesn't really tell us a lot. So yes, he had that moment, and they're supposed to gasp and be shocked, and darn it, he's a real baddie, this one, and they have their little moment with him. We'll get you yet kind of thing. Curse you, villain. It's classical 80s style dungeon crawling, Good, harmless fun, as long as someone doesn't come along and bloody ruin it for everyone, which is what happened here, actually. But a bit of a dampener on that. It could have been an interesting night, really. Also, of interesting note, in regards to the puzzles, they all found it annoying at the time to do the puzzles. One of them even said to me, "Oh, you've given us something stupid here, haven't you?" Sort of thing. Because when they were struggling, But afterwards, came away with the feeling of, yeah, do you know what? I'm really glad that we managed to do that. Actually, I've got a positive feeling I've taken away from it now, even though at the time I was negative about it. Just because I think there's probably too many puzzles at once, perhaps 4 of them. But what I was actually doing there, I was actually test running something for an upcoming thing, because I'm thinking of like massively expanding the Riddling Reaver fighting fantasy thing so that it really becomes really, really puzzly. So I wanted to see kind of what it's like to run a few puzzles in a row, a kind of puzzle type gauntlet, and see how that would go down. It was just an idea. I've never done it before. I thought, oh, puzzle gauntlet? Blimey. Let's see how that works. But yeah, I don't think it really works too well to do too many puzzles in a row. Well, there we have it anyway. The puzzles thing, they aren't written in the notes, so you have to obviously see the video here to exclusively hear about that and what I did. They're in a good place now to head off to the next one they'll be on. They've obviously they'd killed Zortentrog, so they didn't even try to question him, so they would have blown the mission even if that hadn't have been the simulacrum. But we know the real Zortentrog would be very, very difficult to kill anyway. Be a whole different matter. That's another adventure down. They went to level 4, so they're coming through. They're coming through the ranks, aren't they, guys? 15 sessions in, and they've dinged level 4. I don't know. Sounds about right, I suppose. The statue puzzle where they struggled and only got it like after an hour. Unbelievable. I gave them 300 experience for that. So, I mean, a lot of the puzzles is what really gave them most of the experience, to be quite honest. But until next time, this has been an update vidcast on Dragon Age. I will see you at the table.